Are you absolutely broke and still looking for a good PvP build for New World? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you one of the funnest builds I have ever played in New World, and it's even on a budget. All right, let's get started. All right, so the build I'm bringing you today is a Fire Staff Rapier build. Now, you might be asking yourself, why would you pick that for your budget build? Now, we picked that is because we are going glass cannon. We are going 50 con and putting the rest of the points into intelligence. Now, you might be like, Parfax, that seems dumb. Why would you ever go a glass cannon build on a budget build? Bro, you don't do any damage. Well, let's talk about that right off the bat. We're going to start there and then we'll work our way back. Kind of a little bit different style of video here. So the reason why we're stacking it this way is because a couple things. First, it's going to allow you to use pretty much any type of food you want or no food at all. A lot of the best builds or strongest builds in the game rely on you going essentially like 300 points into, for instance, strength, and then going 200 points into constitution. The 200 point constitution bonus is absolutely insane, especially if you're going medium armor. But with this build, I don't care how many points you have. All you essentially need is 350 points, which you can get with, I believe, 500 gear. So you can run this gear set at pretty much any gear score level. Now, we are at a budget build, but we do want to have a few different parameters. So first thing, when it came to gearing, I didn't want to just go, hey, here, we're going to buy all this stuff off the auction house because, well, if it's your auction house, it might be completely different than mine. And what's 500 coins on my server might be 5,000 on yours. So I didn't want to set some arbitrary budget. I basically wanted to make a build that just had 1 to maybe 2 perks on your piece of gear. And that was it. That was good. I also wanted to make sure that each piece of gear was over 590, not only because most gear on servers are over 590, but because if you get a decent piece of gear, you want to be able to upgrade it. All right, so let's start talking about the gear. First, we'll go over the weapons because that's always the funnest part. And we have this weapon. Honestly, it's pretty bad. We have Vicious and Keen Speed. I got this for 250 gold on the auction house. Int rapiers are actually kind of hard to come by. Most of them have decks on them. So just to find an int rapier at all is pretty good. And honestly, if I were to craft one, which after playing this build, I'm probably going to craft one because this is probably the funnest build I've ever played. We're honestly going to go with Enchanted. Now, you might be like, that's a little bit odd. But here's the thing. When we play on the rapier side, most of your damage, if not like 95% of your damage comes off your basic attacks. So that's just an easy way to flat get damage. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about crit when we get to the ring, but crit isn't as good in PvP as people think. A lot of people are running resilient on their gear, which mitigates some of the crit damage. So when we get down the ring, we'll talk a little bit more about crit and a little bit here on the Fire Staff, but we do have Vicious here because if we do end up critting, it can give you a little pop. So if we had, you know, Enchanted on here, it'd be the top, probably then Vicious, or even Refreshing Move can be pretty good as well. But you shouldn't have too much of a problem finding an enchanted one because they're typically not that expensive. Next, we're going to have the Fire Staff, and this might look a little weird, but we're having Refreshing Move and Vicious. Now, I could have actually bought one that was Refreshing Move Keen, but like I said, because everybody has so much crit chance, I didn't want to stack too much crit. You might be like, Parfax, why do you have Vicious? Well, the reason why we have Vicious is because if we do end up crit, which isn't going to happen that often, at least now it's going to pack a little bit of punch with the passive in the Fire Staff tree. In this, we should be able to punch through people's resilient and still hit them pretty decently hard. But Refreshing Move works really well on this build because we are heavy and light attacking all the time. And we want our cooldowns for our Fireball and our Pillar of Fire and our Burnout up as much as possible. And this is going to help us get it there. So Refreshing Move and Vicious, pretty good. But honestly, if you just get Refreshing Move, even if you just get like Vicious, I think it's fine. You can even get something as low as like Enchanted, stuff like that. I would stay away from Keen. There's actually a ton of Fire Stabs you can get. If you just go run Genesis, you can get the Fire Vine, which is Keen, Vicious, Refreshing. That is what I'll be using once I take this build to the next level and start pumping it up a little bit. And we'll talk a few gear upgrades there at the end. But Something like that is going to be really good. If we were to go best in slot, I believe Keen, Vicious, and Flame Attunement or Abyssal Attunement is probably your most damage possibility for your weapon, but that's going to be really, really hard to get. All right, next, let's look over the gear. Honestly, all this gear is pretty bad. We do have one decent piece of gear. So we just have Int Resilient, and then here's our pretty decent piece of gear. We had Con, Refreshing, Evasion, Resilient. Now, honestly, you can just get Resilient on here. We do want to stack some Resilient because we are going Glass Cannon, which means I think Resilient is very, very, very important because we don't want to start getting one shot by bow players. I want to have at minimum 3 pieces of Resilient on my gear at all times. So we want to get that about almost 15% crit resistance so that we can really mitigate a lot of those crit damages. And then we have our Empowering Fireball, which is one of the best perks you can get on this build. We want to give that big extra fireball damage. And again, we have Resilient and Invigorated, which Invigorated doesn't really do a whole lot in this build, but we at least have Resilient. Now, I did have a hat with Refreshing Pillar of Fire, which is something you definitely want to run. The problem is it was a legendary, and I looked on my server, and most of the pieces of gear that were Refreshing Pillar of Fire were like 5 to 10k, and I didn't want to make a build that had that. That is the next upgrade you're going to do, is get that. We'll talk about upgrades here in a minute, but that would be the very next one that I would put in. All right, let's go to the jewelry. We have health, mana recovery. We don't have any mana issues even without this piece of jewelry, so this essentially is a 598 with int and health on it. That's perfectly fine. You can run this with a 550. Doesn't really matter. We're just looking for int and health. That's part of the reason why we went with the Glass Cannon build, because we don't care about getting to 25 stat points. Yes, it is better, but it is going to allow us to really play with our stats. We don't care if or how high we get our stats. We'll go with the ring last, but we'll go with our earring. Again, focused. We really don't care about the mana regen. In Refreshing Toast, you can get a 550 Refreshing Toast. You can get Ill-Gotten Gains. I don't have it anymore, but it's a 490 legendary drop that has like Refreshing Toast, Regeneration, and something else, and you'll be just fine. Yes, you want its con, and that can be a little bit difficult depending on what your gear is, but you just want Refreshing Toast. You want those potions off cooldown as fast as possible. And then we have the ring. So the ring here, we have Hardy fire damage, and this may be the best piece of gear we have on, if not the gloves. Essentially here, what you're looking for is Hardy. Now you see here we have the fire damage enchant over Keen Awareness. Keen Awareness, I believe, in the long term, will outshine this build if we're looking at end game setup. But we're going for budget. We're not going to have the big, Keen on here, Keen on here. We're not going to worry about that. We're getting fire damage Hardy. But the more important thing on here is actually Hardy. If we take this off and we're in light armor, we double dodge, we are out of stamina. That is the one downside to running int, is if you're running int and light, you absolutely have to have Hardy. So if this was a 550 with Hardy, I would much prefer it over a 600 with Keen Awareness and another good perk, right? Like, you definitely want Hardy on here because you're just naturally going to dodge on accident one too many times. And if you're getting chased, you're just going to die because of it. So get Hardy. It is crazy. And then we do have a fire gem up here. I didn't mention it up on the rapier, and that is just because we have a fire damage gem in our fire damage enchant on our ring here. So we're just giving that 50% of that damage on our rapier is going to get boosted by that ring. It's not a whole lot, but we're going to pick a gem. Might as well give it extra damage. All right, when it comes to consumables, you can basically run whatever. I've been running Ginger Snaps. It is just something I had left over. You don't have to run anything. You can run Honing Stones. I do like to run Honing Stones while I'm in there. I have been running Strong Honing Stones only because I've made them. But you can run Weak. You don't have to run any at all. But I do think, at least when you're running this sort of like budget build, it is nice to get that extra oomph of damage, which is part of the reason why we're stacking as much in as possible. It gives you about an extra 5% damage per 50 you go over the 300 perk. So we're trying to get as much damage as possible. You don't have to run mana potions. I put them on there. They're super cheap, but we don't need them. You don't need regeneration pots. You can just go into each outpost rush and you can get your battle breads. You don't have to use your hearty meals, but typically hearty meals are pretty cheap. And then you can just get the potions from the outpost rush as well. So you can go in there with nothing. They even have mana potions. You can go in there just like this. Just like this. Every time, go kill some dogs, go kill some you know, animals and get yourself some battle bread, get yourself some health potions, even mana potions if you like. So pretty easy, pretty simple. All right, let's talk about the tree. We're not going to go over it too much. It is very standard. The rapier tree, we're taking all the right side except for the stamina node, and we're going to get this node right here. I never can tell how to spell it or how to pronounce it. Now, if you want to not take maybe the swiftness perk here, you can get the other refreshing strikes, but typically, especially with running a ranged fire staff, you're not going to chase too many people down with rapier, so the 1% cooldown reduction on hit isn't that great. We just want that little bit extra damage. But if you don't want that extra damage, you can't take the stamina, or if you don't want the speed, you can take the stamina in there. But I really like this setup. I like that little extra speed to, you know, kind of fly around the battlefield. Then when it comes to the fire staff, it's a little bit different than what most people do. So if you look here, we're taking the normal perks, Pillar of Fire, Fireball, and Burnout. If you want to farm a little bit extra points, you can put a point down here into Scorched Earth and maybe not take combat speed, or maybe not take one of the burn passives. But we really do like combat speed here. I think it's really nice, and I kind of like this setup. It's going to give us some mana back. It's going to give us some cooldown reduction. And we don't necessarily need this perk, but if you can start hitting, once you get Refreshing Pillar of Fire, you might start running out of mana if you're just sitting there spamming it. Now, you might notice that we don't run an ultimate. So, honestly, we don't need the mana regen from Reheat, and even if we did, we would have to take a few extra points in here that we don't really want to take. And honestly, Rune of Helios is just pretty bad. It is an amazing, amazing rune if you can sit in it, but we're light armor, and we're going to be dodging around, so we don't really need to take it. Now, if you want to take it and be kind of like a Refreshing Pillar of Fire, you know, bot, you can do that, but it's going to be pretty hard to just sit there and Rune of Helios. In PvP all the time, I rarely see anybody standing in the Rune of Helios. It's essentially that just goes down on the ground, and they almost never come back to it. So we're not taking that. You'll have plenty of damage to actually finish off your targets in this build, so we don't really need that extra damage here. Obviously, if we could get it, it'd be great, but there's like no way to get it. Last, let's just a little bit talk about the gameplay here. If you're going to try to finish off a single target, the best way to do it is we're going to start off with a fully charged heavy, then we're going to do Fireball into Pillar of Fire. Now, you can cancel a little bit of the animation there for the Pillar of Fire with a dodge roll. It's not a big deal, but we are running an Opal, so I do like to start with a dodge roll and then do that, but it's up to you. It's the reason why we're running the Opal. I think the Opal is absolutely crazy on the Fire Staff. I absolutely love it. Now, we do run this build very aggressively. You're going to see in PvP clips here at the end that I play this build excessively aggressive, which is the reason why I love it absolutely so much. But when you're doing that, there's a couple things you want to keep in mind. You can use your Pillar of Fire and your Fireball to your heart's content. The couple things you need to watch out for is basically not wasting your cooldowns on your Rapier. We're going to use this Rapier. You can use it offensively or defensively. If you want to use it offensively, you hit a riposte. Once they've hit it and they've stunned it, you can just do a fully charged heavy, light attack, or fully charged heavy into an evade light attack. That's going to give you such burst damage. Now, one thing to keep in mind is you can actually hit them with more damage if you flesh, but if you stand really close to fleshing with them and you flesh at them, you'll flesh through them. So keep that in mind when you're using it. You do have to be a little bit back to actually get the damage from the flesh. And of course, if you do the flesh, you can then turn around and backstab them, and that can absolutely annihilate somebody just by itself without even having to hit him with the Fire Staff. Now, of course, if you want to use it defensively, how I typically run this is I'll hit riposte. All right, now that they've procced it, I won't touch them. Don't hit them with anything. You're just going to dodge, roll, and then do your flesh. And now that you're fleshed, you can dodge roll again and just hit your burnout, and you are completely away from everybody. That's the reason why I love this build so much, is because you can get out of so many sticky situations if you just manage your cooldowns. I might have a video coming up about why I think the Rapier is the best, if not the best overall weapon in the game, by far the best secondary weapon in the game. The only other option is probably Ice Gauntlet. But the Rapier allows you to play a different way, which is kind of fun. Other weapons kind of enhance whatever you're doing. This weapon pretty much changes how you play the game, which is the reason why I love the Rapier so much. Last, let's talk a little bit about upgrades. What would I do next? So the next thing that I would do is I would get Refreshing Pillar of Fire, and then I would get Sundering Riposte. Those are about the 3 perks you want. You can get like Omnivade if you want. That's the perks you want. We do want some we want resilient. Obviously, I do like refreshing evasion if we can get a couple more pieces with that on it. Now, I want to test this out, and I don't know exactly how many pieces you need. Freedom is actually going to be a best in slot perk. I just know that you have to have a certain amount of pieces of freedom, and I don't know exactly how many. If you know, let me know in the comment section down below how many pieces of freedom you actually need. But freedom is going to be one of the perks that you might even have over something like refreshing evasion. You are going to want to have a certain amount of it. I will test it out and see exactly how many pieces you're going to want to need. Okay. Then, of course, if you can get a piece of jewelry here with party, keen awareness, and something like refreshing evasion, that's really good. Getting something like the fire vine is going to be where you want to upgrade here. The only piece of gear here for your weapon you're going to have to craft, an int weapon. When I craft my int weapon, which I'm going to, we're going to craft it with enchanted on it, and we're going to see what it rolls. Like I said, enchanted, vicious, keen, even something like keenly empowered's okay, not necessarily great. If I could roll flame attunement, that's probably what, and I could get enchanted on it, I think that would be probably right around my bis. For the rapier is going to be like a flame attunement and an enchanted. That may be what I try to do and just pray I get like enchanted or something like that. But it's going to be a lot of fun trying to roll that weapon. But obviously, if we could craft a fire staff, I think Keen, Vicious, and Flame Attunement are going to be your 3 best perks. People are really underestimating. They're finally starting to realize how good like Flame Attunement is. It's really, really, really good. And if you can get on your weapon, it is quite a bit of extra damage. And then after that, obviously, you're going to get some Legos and your jewelry here. Your amulet, we want Health Divine, more than likely. There's an argument to be made that Divine isn't as good. And for your earring, Refreshing Toast and Nimble are probably my 2 favorite. We want to get that stamina regen. Those are kind of like my standard perks for the earring and the necklace are your Refreshing Toast, Nimble, and then we want our Health Divine, which I think are kind of the just overall really good perks. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comment section down below if you want to see more combat. Let me know if you want to see this build fully fleshed out or as much as possible. I don't have a ton of gold anymore, so I can't just go out and buy and everything, but I can craft a rapier and we can start, you know, messing around with this a little bit more. It'll be definitely something that I upgrade and I start playing. Let me know if you want to see a video about it when I get everything upgraded, what the stats look like, how it plays, and see what my thoughts are on the difference. There's PvP clips coming up after this. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Burning the bridge that keeps us. I'm here and I'm feeling exaggerated, that's what you assume. The story's over now, I must conclude. I am conflicted, watching where I step still, hanging in the balance, not the life I want to live.